What if I told you? The man society fears the most isn't the loud one in the room. It's not the alpha shouting over others, not the influencer collecting likes like currency. It's the quiet man, the one who doesn't look around for approval, because he's already found everything he needs within himself. Now picture this. He's sitting alone at a modest cafe in the heart of a noisy city. Around him, the world is spinning in fast forward. Every table is occupied but not really present. People are trapped in small glowing rectangles. Couples take selfies, adding filters to love. Groups burst into laughter at shallow gossip. Solo diners swipe right and left like they're searching for life itself in a dating app. But this man, he's doing none of that. He's wearing earbuds not for music. He's listening to an audiobook on Stoicism, his face calm, eyes steady. While others are feeding dopamine with TikTok videos, he's feeding his soul with the words of Epictetus and Seneca. He isn't there to be seen. He isn't trying to look interesting. He is interested in understanding life. And here's what sets him apart. He's not lonely. He's not awkward. He's not chasing attention. He doesn't need your praise, your reply, your presence. And that makes him the most dangerous person in the room. But why? Why would a man who simply enjoys his own company, who doesn't need to perform, can sit with his thoughts without trying to escape them? Why would that scare anyone? Because society has trained us to believe that being alone is failure, that silence equals emptiness. Independence is a weakness disguised as pride. And here he is, proving the opposite. He's a threat to people, but to the illusion that we need constant validation to matter. Let's get brutally honest. Everything around you, social media, advertising, online dating, even some forms of modern therapy, is built on one massive assumption, that you're not enough. Think about it. What does every app, every ad, every life coach whisper into your subconscious? You need someone to complete you. Find your tribe, your soulmate, your circle. Don't be alone, it means you're broken. But what if it's all a lie? What if the man sitting quietly by himself, completely content with his own presence, isn't sad, strange, or antisocial, but awakened? Here's the truth. Society doesn't fear the man who can't be alone. Society fears the man who doesn't need to be with anyone. Because that man, he's free, and freedom is unprofitable. You can't sell insecurity to someone who knows their worth. You can't hook someone into a dating app if they don't feel incomplete. You can't manipulate a mind that has found peace in solitude. So what do they do instead? They label him. They call him cold, detached, weird, introverted, antisocial. And they say it with a tone of concern. But deep down, it's fear. Because this man doesn't play the game. He doesn't need your affirmation. He doesn't need to be liked. He doesn't even need to be understood. And that's terrifying to a world built on needing to belong. Let me tell you about two men who understood this dangerous power. Marcus Aurelius, Emperor of Rome, the most powerful man in the ancient world. A man who could command armies with a whisper, and yet he spent his nights writing alone in a journal never meant to be read by anyone else. He questioned himself. He challenged his thoughts. And he famously wrote, "All cruelty springs from weakness." This was a man who ruled the world, still feared becoming a prisoner to his own ego. And then there was Friedrich Nietzsche, the philosopher who lost his sanity, but whose words outlived kings and nations. He said, "The individual has always had to struggle not to be overwhelmed by the tribe." Nietzsche saw what most miss. The price of thinking for yourself is isolation. Most people can't handle that, because most people would rather drown in comfort than stand alone in truth. But these men, they chose solitude over popularity, stillness over noise. reflection over reaction, and that's what made them timeless. So what does this mean for you? It means that your ability to sit alone, to think deeply, to be unseen and still at peace, isn't a weakness. It's a superpower. And like all superpowers, it makes people uncomfortable. But that's okay, because the goal is not to be liked. It's to be true. True to your values, your thoughts, your inner compass. You see, the man who has learned to enjoy his own company has already mastered what billions of people are still chasing: peace, presence, and self-command. So next time you see someone alone at a coffee shop, don't pity them. Don't label them. Don't assume they're lonely. They might just be the most dangerous person in the room because they've discovered something the rest of the world is still too distracted to notice. That solitude isn't the absence of connection, it's the presence of clarity. So, what exactly happens inside the mind of someone who chooses solitude, not because they're afraid of people, but because they've outgrown the need for applause? Let's take a deeper look. Because once you understand this mindset, you'll never see silence the same way again. First, you've escaped the addiction most people don't even realize they have. Approval. Yes, approval. Addiction. Every like, every retweet, every view becomes a digital drug. You scroll, post, check, scroll, post, check again. But the man who has chosen solitude has gone cold turkey, while the rest of the world is chasing the next dopamine hit. He's grounded in something far more powerful: self-respect. Not the kind that brags, but the kind that doesn't need to explain itself. He no longer asks, "Do they like me?" He asks, "Do I still like who I'm becoming?" That's a shift so subtle, it's so radical. Second, they've mastered what? Most people run from discomfort. Let's be honest, most people can't last 5 minutes in silence without grabbing their phone. Why? Because silence strips away distractions. It confronts us with our real, unfiltered self. And for many, that's terrifying. But the dangerous loner, he's made peace with the echoes in his mind. He doesn't run from the shadows. He sits down and talks to them. He's had the 3 a.m. conversations no one else hears, the ones that go, "Why did that failure crush me? Why am I so afraid of being misunderstood? Who am I when there's no one to impress?" Instead of numbing those moments, he uses them. Like a blacksmith forging iron and fire, he forges himself. Third, he cannot be manipulated. In this, he is where it gets truly stoic. Because when you stop seeking validation, you become immune to rejection. You can't be blackmailed with loneliness. Can't be seduced with popularity. Can't be bought with praise or silenced. With shame, you become. It's untouchable. And this wasn't just theory. Marcus Aurelius lived it. Let's talk about what I call the Marcus method. Strength through solitude. Every evening, the man who could snap his fingers and have nations moved would sit alone with parchment and pen. He'd reflect. He'd question. He'd strip his ego raw. He would write, "What did I desire today that I didn't actually need? What did I fear that was outside my control? Where did I seek approval that made me betray my own values?" That's not journaling. That's self-training. That's the discipline of inner command. Because Marcus knew, if you don't examine your thoughts, someone else will program them for you. And when you train your mind like that, you stop falling for shallow games. You stop reacting to gossip. You stop caring about status battles that are meaningless. Their approval? It's noise. Their judgment? It's just wind. Because when you know yourself, no one can confuse you. Who didn't just stop at mastering solitude. He dared to ask, what if we created our own values instead of inheriting someone else's? Most people don't even realize they're living according to beliefs they never questioned. Their morality? A hand-me-down? Their politics? A copy-paste? their ambitions. But when you start spending time alone, really alone, you begin to ask questions that make society nervous. Questions like, why do I believe this? Who benefits from me obeying this? What would I believe if no one had ever told me what to think? Once you do that, you become unpredictable, uncontrollable. You're no longer a cog in the machine. You're the one holding the wrench. You stop buying what you're told to buy. You stop voting how you're told to vote. You stop living the script and start writing your own. Now let's make one thing crystal clear. There's a massive difference between loneliness and solitude. Loneliness is a state of lack. It whispers something's missing. Someone's missing. You're not enough without them. But solitude? Solitude is a state of wholeness. It doesn't cry for completion. It celebrates contentment. You don't sit in solitude because you have no one. You sit in solitude because you've finally realized you are not no one. You are enough. And that scares people. Because if more people realized the power of solitude, if more people stopped needing attention to feel alive, if more people dared to be whole by themselves, the world wouldn't run the same way. The systems would collapse. Noise would die, and something strange would rise in its place. Stillness, awareness, real strength. The kind of strength that doesn't shout, but changes everything just by existing. So now solitude isn't weakness, it's a fortress. And the person who finds peace in silence is no longer a prisoner of noise. But let's take it deeper. Because there's a reason society confuses solitude with loneliness. And spoiler alert, it's not by accident. It's by design. Society wants you lonely because lonely people consume. A lonely person will buy things they don't need. They'll fill the void with shopping carts, validation, and distractions. They'll scroll endlessly, hoping something or someone will fix the ache they never dared to face. But a person who enjoys solitude, they don't consume blindly. They don't chase empty pleasure. They don't numb themselves just to get through the day. They sit still. They reflect. They think. And in a system built on blind compliance, thinking is dangerous because the moment you stop reacting, you start seeing. That's why true solitude is revolutionary. And if you want to understand why, let me introduce you to what I call the 4 pillars of dangerous solitude. Lessons drawn directly from the lives and writings of Marcus Aurelius and Nietzsche. 1. Radical self-anesthetist, dangerous loner, doesn't lie to themselves. They don't sugarcoat their flaws. They don't create stories to justify their pain. They ask themselves the uncomfortable questions. What am I running from? Why do I feel the need to impress? What's really driving my choices? And because they tell themselves the truth, they can spot lies in others from miles away. They don't fall for flattery, don't get seduced by social performances. They don't buy into the masks people wear. They've unmasked themselves, and now nothing can fool them too. Value-based independence. Most people live by default. They inherit beliefs, morals, and standards from their families, their schools, their cultures, never once questioning, is this mine? Or was it given to me? But the man rooted in solitude has rewritten his code. He's not immoral, far from it. In fact, he's more moral than most. But his morality doesn't come from pressure or shame. It comes from reason, from clarity, from conscious choice. He doesn't do what's expected. He does what's right, even when no one's watching.
Nice.
Even when everyone disagrees. You can't guilt-trip this man. You can't shame him into compliance. He is guided by principle, not popularity. 3. Emotional self-sufficiency. Where the game changes entirely, most people are emotionally fragile because their happiness depends on others. They need someone to love them, like them, notice them, validate them. Without it, they collapse. But the stoic-minded loner? He has become his own source of strength. He's learned to hold himself in the storm, to sit in grief without being destroyed, to celebrate without an audience, to find joy that isn't rented from someone else. You can't manipulate this man with silence. You can't control him with affection. He doesn't need your approval to feel whole. He is enough, and that makes him terrifying to those who depend on weakness to feel powerful. For intellectual courage, perhaps the rarest trait of all, this man doesn't just think for himself. He dares to think dangerously. He questions what others call normal. He challenges beliefs that have never been challenged. He asks, what if everything I've been told is wrong? And unlike most, he doesn't stop thinking just because the answer is uncomfortable. He goes deeper. He follows truth, not trends. And when he speaks, it's not to be liked, it's to liberate. Even if that means being misunderstood, even if that means standing alone. Because the truth once known cannot be unknown. And he'd rather be hated for truth than loved for lies. But let's be real, this path isn't easy. There's a cost to this kind of freedom. People won't get it. They'll call you arrogant, antisocial, cold. They'll pathologize your peace because they've never known a peace that didn't depend on attention. You won't be lonely, but you will feel isolated. Because once you elevate your consciousness, you'll realize most people are living in another dimension entirely. Not higher, not lower, just unaware. Some friends will fade. Not because you changed, but because you no longer feed the dynamic where your neediness made them feel needed. Even family might resist. Growth terrifies those who haven't grown. And you'll face pressure. Subtle, persistent, societal. Be more normal. Come out more. Why are you always alone? But here's the kicker. The price of conformity is your soul. Yes, your voice, your clarity, your autonomy. All traded in for the comfort of being accepted by people who don't even know who they are. Now ask yourself this. Is being misunderstood worse than being untrue to yourself? Coming up next. Why society fears the self-sufficient man. Because once you stop needing them, you become a mirror. And not everyone is ready to see what's reflected back. So yes, solitude comes at a price, but so does conformity. And the moment you stop chasing approval, the world starts to see you differently. Not as invisible, but as unpredictable. And that bunny is what terrifies society. Let's be honest. A person who no longer needs to impress anyone becomes unmanageable. Why? Because systems thrive on dependence. On people trying to prove their worth. On you needing to buy, to belong, to believe whatever keeps the machine running. But the man who is content within himself, he doesn't reach for validation, doesn't spend to impress people he doesn't even like, he doesn't dress for, status. He doesn't vote based on trends. And suddenly he becomes a glitch in the system. A silent rebellion. 1. Economic threat. He's not buying what they're selling. Let's break it down. A self-sufficient man doesn't need to keep up with fashion to feel worthy. He doesn't need a luxury car to validate his identity. He doesn't need the latest gadget to feel like he belongs. He consumes with intention, not emotion. He doesn't shop because he's sad. He doesn't scroll because he's lonely. He doesn't buy into trends because everyone else is doing it, and that makes him a bad consumer, but a powerful man. Because if enough people stop trying to fill inner voids with outer possessions, the economy would tremble too. Social threat. He doesn't play the status game. Status is a ladder built on insecurity. On who's higher, who's better, it's more admired. But what happens when someone stops climbing? What happens when someone sits down, looks up, and says, "None of this actually matters"? You can't rank someone who doesn't compete. You can't pressure someone who's already free. You can't shame someone who no longer seeks applause. And suddenly he becomes unpredictable. Not because he's unstable, but because he's untouchable. 3. Political threat. He thinks for himself here. It's a hard truth most won't say out loud. Democracy works best when people can be persuaded, not when they're deeply grounded. The man who thinks for himself doesn't follow the herd. He doesn't vote out of fear. He doesn't shout slogans. Listens, reflects, then chooses. He can't be swayed by hysteria. Doesn't need a tribe to tell him what to believe. And when enough minds think like this, political influence crumbles. Control systems weaken because influence depends on predictability and the self-sufficient mind. It doesn't follow scripts. 4. Psychological threat. His freedom exposes their prison and, perhaps the most painful truth of all. When someone is at peace alone, it reflects back everything others are avoiding. His calmness reveals their chaos. His stillness highlights their panic. His self-contentment makes their dependence visible. It's not that they hate him, it's that his existence reminds them of everything they're not ready to face. And this is why society doesn't just misunderstand solitude. It fears it because a man who's free inside can't be bought, broken, or bent. So now what? How do you become this kind of man? Not a rebel with noise, but a rebel with discipline. Stoic of the modern age. Here's where you start. Step 1. Take small doses of solitude. Begin with silence. No phone, no music, no noise. Just you. And your thoughts start with 10 minutes a day. Not to meditate perfectly. It's just to observe. Watch how quickly your mind panics. Notice the urge to reach for distraction. That's where the real training begins, because once you stop avoiding your thoughts, you begin mastering them. Step 2. Practice the evening review, like Marcus Aurelius every night. Reflect. Ask yourself, what did I do well today? Where did I react instead of respond? What truth did I avoid? Did I act in alignment with who I want to become? Don't judge, just witness, then write. This isn't journaling for likes. This is self-leadership. You're not writing to impress. You're writing to train your mind to see clearly. Step 3. Question what you believe. Ask yourself, why do I believe this? Who told me this was true? Who profits from me staying silent? You don't need to reject everything, but you must examine everything, because only when you question the scripts can you write your own. Step 4. Build a rich inner life. Do things that don't require an audience. Read, walk, think, create, sketch, tend a garden, solve a puzzle. Write something you never publish. Do it not for praise, but because your inner world deserves attention too. Step 5. Detach from validation. This is the hardest part. Stop checking who liked your post. Stop measuring your value by reactions. Giving people the power to decide how you feel about yourself. Instead, ask, would I still be proud of this if no one ever knew? That's the Stoic standard, and it'll change everything. Now here's the paradox. The most magnetic people are the ones who don't need you. The moment you stop needing attention, you become the kind of presence people crave. Not because you're trying, but because you're whole. People are drawn to self-contained energy, to inner calm, to unshakable peace. But here's the key. You're not doing it to be admired. You're doing it because it's the right way to live. The admiration. Just a byproduct, not the goal. That's why relationships improve when you don't need them. When you choose someone, not because you're afraid to be alone, but because their presence aligns with your peace, Love becomes authentic. Friendship becomes sacred. Connection becomes free of control. And when work no longer defines your worth, you do it better because you're not performing. You're contributing. Life itself becomes more meaningful when you stop needing it to prove something. So what happens when you finally stop chasing approval? You begin. You finally start building a life that is yours. Not one inherited. Not one expected. But one chosen. Intentionally. Courageously. Unapologetic ally. And that, my friend, is where real power begins. The call to dangerous living. Here's my challenge to you. Become dangerous. Not in the way society fears, but in the way society needs. Not the kind of danger that harms, controls, or dominates, but the kind of danger that like it, in the sense that you're impossible to manipulate, because your self-worth isn't for sale. Be dangerous in the sense that you think it for yourself, even when the cost is your comfort, even when silence would be easier. Be dangerous in the sense that your mind is your fortress. Your values are your compass. Your peace is your rebellion. Because in a world where everyone's looking outward, you looked inward. And that right there is dangerous. When you have your own moral code, not borrowed from the crowd, not enforced by guilt, but rooted in reflection and guided by reason, you become a force of nature. You walk through chaos calmly. You move through noise without being shaken. You no longer fear disapproval because you no longer depend on it. The world needs more of you, let's be real. We don't need more people trying to be liked. We don't need more influencers chasing trends. More leaders who can't lead themselves. It's more souls so afraid of being alone that they lose who they are in every crowd. We need more people who can't be bought. It's more people who don't change based on who's watching. It's more people who aren't obsessed with being seen, focused on being real. We need men and women who are dangerous in their stillness, dangerous in their presence, dangerous in the way they listen more than they speak, question more than they assume, and live more than they perform. Because when you can sit in silence with yourself, not feel like you're missing something, you've already found what most people are still searching for. You found wholeness. And wholeness doesn't beg, doesn't bend, it doesn't break. If this message hit you deep, you know what to do. Something stirred inside you while watching this. If you felt a chill, a pause, tightening in your chest, you already know this wasn't just content. It was a wake-up call. And now I ask you, don't let it stop here. Share this with someone you know is ready to hear it. Not someone scrolling for entertainment. Someone who's aching to break free. Because the algorithm won't push this kind of truth. You can drop a comment. What's one belief you've been carrying that you never actually chose for yourself? What's one area in your life where you've been chasing validation when you could be building self-respect? Let's make this space not just another video, but a mirror, a conversation, a shift.